This is what if Tatsumi from a Gummy Got Killed was Whipping X. Let's dive right into it. Normally, I start off this fanfiction with Tatsumi, and that's how I'm gonna do it. I ain't gonna change much. That was a waste of time to say that whole kind of sentence, but let's just dive right into this fanfiction. We start our story off with Tatsumi and how he would become Whipping X in this world. How would he become the Wolverine, the Pitted Frank, in lesser words. So we start our story off with Tatsumi as a child. We start our story off with Tatsumi doing his thing as he would eventually find his way in the village. And the village would be somewhere the same. Nothing really changing too much. But in this world, mutants would have been a thing. In this world, alongside the creation of the Imperial Arms, with that creation of all of them, a huge blast of magical energy pretty much sped up the evolutionary chain of humanity and humans all around the globe, starting the epidemic and the slow but surely very inevitable mutation in humans. People all around the globe were born with superhuman abilities, and later in life, near their teenage adolescence years, they would soonly discover they had these superhuman abilities and mutations. Majority of these beings would be persecuted and pretty much discriminated against. The majority of them keeping their powers away and locked away for years to come and keeping it a secret, and only telling their loved ones, and eventually leaving countries and different sides of the world so they can live peaceful lives with their loved ones and have children with them in case that child was born with a mutation like them. So we start our story, we continue, or we pretty much jump on Tatsume's life, as Tatsume would have been going through his life similarly the same. But right around when Tatsume was about 10 years old, the story would have changed. The time would have stood still, a bit simple. Tatsume would have been doing his thing, as eventually we would be shown that, Tatsume's father and his mother were nearly like the head chieftains in the village he was in. And we see that Tatsume, as a child, would have these best friends, pretty much his two best friends, like we saw in original canon. But something would be going on under the veil. Somehow it was a town village drunk, but also a town village warrior that was basically kind of just walking and pretty much sulking in his misery of losing an arm during the war. Now, it being replaced with a wooden prosthetic, but it not being the same. The man would be going around the town, and eventually one night Tatsume would have woken up in the middle of the night, being accompanied by his best friend sharpening his nails for some reason. As we would see that Tatsume would have been interrupted by his father, as his father would have told him that Tatsume's friend's father is here. Tatsumi would be confused, as his friend would have walked off, and we would see that his friend in this universe would have been different. Instead of the original canon best friend that Tatsumi had in the original episode 1, he would be replaced with a similar version of his original self, but with blonde hair, and his name being Victor. As Victor would have been walking down, as he would have tried to tell his father to leave and that you're embarrassing yourself, as he would have been yelling, saying that I want to see him. I'm sick and tired of keeping this secret. I'm sick and tired of that man taking my responsibility. Tatsume's father would have came out downstairs saying that he's my responsibility. And he's not your son, Victor. You keep on telling yourself that, but he's not. As Tatsume's mother would have came out and would have gone into depth about how it's true. As Tatsume's father would have been confused, but us getting switched to a gunshot. And Tatsumi upstairs hearing this, as he would have gotten out of his bed, him being a little bit sickly, and somehow these last few weeks has been under very high temperature and somehow seemingly being sick. Tatsumi would have ran downstairs, seeing his father on the floor with a gunshot in his chest, and Victor's father standing over him with a shotgun, and Tatsume's mother in the corner fearing. Tatsumi's mother told him to run, and Victor trying to tell him to calm down and to come with him, and trying to calm down his father as well. But we see that Tatsume would have ran towards him, and would have stabbed him in the heart. His heart pumping and his blood flowing, and Tatsumi would eventually let go as he would realize what he did. The man would have been pinned against the wall by these little 6 claws Tatsumi would have projected out of his hands. Tatsumi would have pulled his hands out of the father, or out of Victor's father, as he would have looked at him as he would have said that he wasn't your father. As he would have died, as Tatsumi would be confused. Tatsumi's mother would have told him that I'm sorry that I didn't tell you. But what are you? As Tatsumi would have been scared, frightened even, as he wanted to run, so he booked it. He started running out of the village as eventually he would pass by one of his old friends, or pretty much the girl from Original Canon, as they would be confused on what that was going on, as they would have followed after Tatsumi. Victor would have caught up with Tatsumi, telling him to relax and that you just killed that man. They're going to come for us. They're going to hunt us. They're going to find out what we are. Tatsumi would be confused on, what do you mean, Victor? As he would have popped his claws, showing his nails, saying that I'm like you. We're brothers. We're brothers. We need to stick together, okay? As they would have gotten their shit together, as they would have started to go on a run, eventually being accompanied by their third friend, Seiyu. As Seiyu, Victor, and Tatsumi would have gone on a run, as they would have been on the run. Tatsumi and them eventually finding and looking through the pretty much multiple different wars that were going on, and somehow, to our knowledge, Tatsumi, Victor, and Seiyu would have been going through the years fighting in different side quests and wars around the capital and around the city and around the world, to be frank, as eventually them leading up and trying to make a life. Eventually Tatsumi and Victor making their way to the capital, and it would be about, let's say, a 2-year gap, them being on the run, them being in battles across the country, as eventually they would come to the capital trying to find a way to get money, as we would hear that Tatsumi and Victor would have heard rumors about the capital being filled with corrupt politicians and honestly corrupt, psychopaths, but them not really caring, as they wanted to find a, living for each other. They wanted to be able to, provide for each other and be able to have each other's back financially and live a normal life somewhere in the mountains and get a bunch of money and buy land. As eventually they would have gone the route, but undertoning, Victor would have had a different type of mindset. Victor wanted to be more in war. He loved the feeling of killing. But Tatsumi, Victor, and Seiyu make their way in the capital, as they would be chilling and relaxing, but eventually we would get seen that, Tatsumi would have eventually come to the Adventurers Guild alongside, no one, because they would have split up. Victor, Seiyu, and Tatsumi would have split up, as they would have made their way across the capital, trying to make a fortune and trying to make themselves better. But before they got to the capital, they did split up after one of the battles they would have won on the other side of the country. As we see that Tatsumi would have been making his way in the capital, as eventually he would be somewhat of a still cocky type of childish kid, as he would have still yelled, saying that he needed a bigger, class to start from, since, he's better, and he's probably better than any of the adventurers up in here. Him eventually being told off to get away, as he would have to start at rank F or something like that. But Tatsumi just scoffing it off. Tatsumi wouldn't get an easy way to get up in the, world, as Tatsumi, for some reason, we know Tatsumi fought in wars, and Tatsumi fought in battles, to put it simple. Not in straight up wars, but battles that related with the wars going on in the country. Tatsumi saw a lot of blood and guts and horror, but somehow he always blocked it out of his mind. But Victor didn't. Victor changed with all those years of him killing and murdering and ripping the people apart, and using his superhuman strength, durability, superhuman reflexes, and claws to his advantage. We see that Tatsumi would eventually get approached by Liona, or the Lion Girl, as eventually she would still duke him out of his money, as Tatsumi would be pissed off, him being on the side of the road, as eventually he would be picked up by the same girl in the carriage. as they would have brought him to the castle. But in this universe, the castle would have been different. As soon as Tatsumi got there, he would have been drugged instantly after one of the members there would have been some sort of mutant similar to Caliban, being able to sense mutations and mutants. As they would have saw Tatsumi on the side of the road, knowing he was a mutant, as they would have taken him in and would have thrown him down into the dungeon or the cabin area, as they would have basically shown Tatsumi, seeing in him having blurry vision and his eyes opening and closing, him seeing people getting murdered, locked up, and chained up and tortured. As Tatsumi would have been put down in a underground area connected to the castle or the pretty much estate, as Tatsumi would have been in a big white room or pretty much a kind of a concrete area, as he would have been plunged into multiple different tests, them testing his superhuman abilities, his claws, his regeneration, and his healing factor. Them knowing that his healing factor was incredibly powerful, as he would be a perfect candidate for what they were trying to do. As they would basically start it off. Now, they would be working for the capital, but majority of their secret organization would have been by mainly focused towards taking mutants on the side of the street and converting them to work for the capital and win the war and take down Night Raid and basically be the best of the best. Basically using mutants as weapons, as they thought mutants were nothing but tools and weapons for them to use, and they were just abominations made from the product of human disgustingness, or something along those sides. Now, what would happen is Tatsumi would have been thrown into multiple different tests, as they would have burned him, staked him alive, shot him down, as they would find out that it was practically impossible to kill him, as they knew that they needed to start the next trial of his test and turn him into Weapon X. Tatsumi would have been wheeled down a hallway, seeing multiple different weapons like Weapon Z, Weapon Y, and some sort of big burly dude with gray skin busting down the walls trying to get out, but him not getting successful at all. Tatsumi would eventually make his way down there in the main area where they were being basically, pretty much to be simple, looked over by one of the main, I forgot his name, but the uncle of the king in the Akame ga Kill universe. Him looking over the test, saying that Project Weapon X is in action. As they would have dunked Tatsumi into a huge vial of blue liquid, as Tatsumi would start to try to get out of it, as he would have been pumped a shit ton of sedatives. I mean, sedatives that probably would have been able to put 5 freaking elephants in a coma. Tatsumi would have been there, as Tatsumi would open his eyes, him gaining reconsciousness right when put it simple, right, and I mean right when the needles stuck Tatsumi's skin, Tatsumi gained consciousness. Tatsumi would start to try to run off and try to break out, but him being too still somewhat sedated, or pretty much sedated, as Tatsumi would have felt the middle pour and fuse with his bone structure. Tatsumi's skull would have been filled with adamantium, and his whole entire body would have been coated in it. Eventually, Tatsumi losing consciousness. Eventually, them thinking Tatsumi died since his heartbeat stopped, but them all being shot, Tatsumi would have broken out of the vial and basically would have popped his claws, showing his adamantium pimped out claws and his heightened strength now. He was better. He was a weapon. Tatsumi would have ran out the pretty much lap, as he would have started to claw through the soldiers and basically rip them apart. Eventually, Tatsumi would have started to run out, as he would have clawed his way up all the way to the beginning of the shed, as he would have looked around, as his memories would have started to fade out, but him remembering 2 specific things: his brother, his friend, and his family. The majority of everything he went through, he would have started to see glimpses, fade reminders of those times. The time, the reality, everything he was feeling would start to go away slowly. But him remembering one specific thing, he had a brother named Victor, and he had a friend named Sayu. As he would have looked up, as he would have saw Sayu tortured and strung up and dead. Tatsumi would have been enraged even more than he was, him being poked and prodded for weeks on end, for months even. And now him seeing one of his childhood friends killed and strung up, Tatsumi would have been utterly and completely filled with rage and anger and torment and grief. Tatsumi would have kicked down the door as him seeing the girl from earlier, as she would have been accompanied by one of the guards, as they would have been followed by Kame. Tatsumi would have cut down the guard with ease, cutting his whole entire body into two with his claws, and him stabbing the girl in the stomach, yelling out in rage and pain, throwing her down on the ground and seeing her bleed out. Tatsumi would have cut down Seiyu, as Seiyu would have started to say her last final words, as she was right about to die from infection and also a massive amount of blood loss. Seiyu would have told him that she's happy that she was able to spend these last few years with him, and she was happy that she had a friend like you. But to say the least, she told, Tatsumi, that Victor is your brother, but it's something about him. It's something about him, as she would have died. Tatsumi would have tried to yell at her, trying to wake her back to sleep, saying, no, don't go, as Tatsumi would have started to cry. We said he would be interrupted by Kame, as Kame would have told him that you're a mutant, right? You're one of their experiments. As Tatsumi would have said, who are you? What are you? Who are you? As Kame would have said, we're Night Raid. As she would have slashed Tatsumi, as Tatsumi would have fell onto the ground. Her thinking that she killed him, but eventually her looking closely, smiling, saying it is him. It's the Wolverine. As it's been named on the battlefield about Victor and Tatsumi, and about how they called them codenames like Sabretooth, the Killer, the Whippins, or the Dogs, the Nighthounds, or more specifically Sabretooth and Wolverine, them being big pop names, or big, pretty much, I guess you could say, folklore-ish names to the public about the battlefield. As basically what happened is Kami would have grabbed Tatsumi, seeing that his body started to regenerate and heal from the curse, and would have started to repel the curse out of his body. Tatsumi, for some reason, having some sort of immunity to Akame's blade. Akame would have grabbed Tatsumi, and basically would have had, bro pick him up and make their way to the Night Raid base. As we get switched to a different story, Victor's story. And I'll leave it up here, guys. So, yeah, I just went over like Tatsume's origin and everything like that. But yeah, so pretty simple. There is going to be different mutants in this world. Go in the comments. What type of different mutants do you want me to introduce? Should anybody else on the Night Raid cast be a mutant? And if so, what should be their mutant ability? But that's for you guys to decide in the comments. But yeah, so I'm going to be introducing other Wolverine characters besides Victor, aka pretty much Sabretooth in this universe. And yeah, this is very heavily inspired by X-Men Origins. But besides that, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. And as always, guys, have a blessed day. I know this was a pretty short video, but it is what it is. Deuces.